Let's talk about something we've all wanted at some point. Closure. That final conversation, that text, that explanation that will finally make sense of the heartbreak. But here's the truth. If you're dealing with an avoidant, asking them for closure is like chasing a mirage in the desert. You'll keep running toward it, believing you're about to find peace, and all you'll end up with is exhaustion. Avoidants are experts at pulling away when emotions get intense. The moment things start to feel too close, too real, too vulnerable, they vanish, and then you're left replaying every word, wondering what you did wrong, and aching for that one conversation that'll make it all make sense. But listen carefully. You don't need their words to close your story. You can write your own ending. See, the reason you want closure from them isn't because you can't move on. It's because you want validation. You want to know that what you felt mattered. You want to know you weren't crazy for caring. But that validation will never come from someone who's scared of their own emotions. When you chase closure from an avoidant, you hand them your power on a silver platter. You tell them, you get to decide when I heal. So instead of asking for closure, do something that'll completely shift the dynamic. Detach with dignity, go quiet, go calm, go focused, not the cold, silent treatment. No, the calm silence of someone who's done begging to be seen. Don't post cryptic quotes. Don't chase. Don't try to prove your worth. You prove it by walking away with grace. Here's what happens next. And it's powerful. When you stop seeking closure, they start feeling the space you've created. The absence of your attention becomes deafening. Avoidants crave control, but when you stop playing the game, they lose it. And that's when regret begins to bloom in their mind. Not because you manipulated them, but because they realized they lost someone who had already healed themselves. The person who once begged for answers has now become the one who doesn't need them. You see, closure doesn't come from understanding them. It comes from understanding you. Why you gave so much, why you ignored the red flags, why you kept hoping they'd meet you halfway. The moment you face those truths, you don't just move on, you level up. And that's the ultimate regret for an avoidant. They expect you to crumble without their presence. But when you rise, when you glow, when you thrive, when you stop looking back, they see the one thing they can't have anymore. Your peace. So never ask an avoidant for closure. Give yourself the gift of peace instead. Because the day you stop waiting for their explanation is the day you start writing your comeback story. And trust me, that's a story they'll replay for a long, long time. Closure isn't something someone else can hand to you, wrapped in a neat explanation or apology. It's something you have to build within yourself, brick by brick, moment by moment. When someone leaves you confused, when they pull away without warning or disappear when things get real, the natural instinct is to chase understanding. You tell yourself that if you could just hear their side, just know Wi-Fi, you'd be able to move on. But what you're really searching for isn't information. It's emotional peace. And that's the thing no one else can ever truly give you. When you depend on another person to give you closure, you hand them control over your healing. You allow their silence to dictate your peace. Think about that for a second. The very person who hurt you, who avoided communication, now holds the power to free you from that pain. That's a dangerous loop to live in. Avoidants often don't even know what they feel, so waiting for them to explain their distance is like waiting for someone lost to draw you a map. You'll stay stuck, hoping for direction from someone who's still wandering. True closure starts when you stop trying to solve their mystery and start focusing on your own truth. Ask yourself, what am I really missing here? Is it their words or the comfort of knowing I mattered? The need for closure often masks a deeper craving for validation. You want to know that your love wasn't wasted, that the time and energy you gave weren't for nothing. But closure isn't about rewriting their story. It's about reclaiming yours. It's realizing that even if they never explain, you can still understand what happened through your own reflection. You can find closure when you stop asking why they left and start asking what their absence is, teaching you, maybe it's teaching you boundaries. Maybe it's teaching you to listen to red flags. Maybe it's teaching you that love shouldn't feel like confusion. Closure becomes an act of self-respect when you decide that your peace matters more than their explanation. You may never get the answers you want, but you'll gain something far more powerful. Clarity about who you are and what you deserve. The moment you stop seeking closure from someone else, something inside you begins to shift. You start to see that closure is not a single conversation. It's a process of acceptance. It's the moment you stop rereading old messages hoping to decode meaning. It's when you stop waiting for them to wake up and realize your worth. Closure is the quiet decision to say, I may never know why they did what they did, but I'm choosing to move forward anyway. That's strength. That's freedom. When you reach that place, you take back your narrative. You no longer need their words to validate your pain or their presence to validate your worth. You become your own source of peace. You stop chasing closure and start creating it through self-awareness, forgiveness, and the courage to let go. And in that moment, you finally realize that closure was never something they could give you. It was something you had the power to create all along. Validation is one of the deepest emotional needs we have as humans. We want to feel seen, heard, and understood, especially by the people we love. When someone we care about pulls away or ends things without explanation, it leaves behind a void that feels unbearable. We start looking to them to fill that void, hoping they'll say something that makes the pain make sense. But the truth is, when you depend on someone, especially an avoidant, for validation, you hand them the keys to your self-worth. You give them the power to define how valuable you are, and that's a power no one else deserves to hold. The reason we chase validation is simple. We confuse it with love. We think that if they acknowledge our pain, if they admit they miss us, or if they finally express remorse, then everything will somehow feel balanced again. But validation from someone emotionally unavailable is like trying to light a fire with wet matches. It will never ignite. Avoidants are not wired to comfort through vulnerability. They pull back when emotions run high because it threatens their sense of control. So when you seek validation from them, you're asking them to operate in a way that goes against their instinct. And while you're waiting for them to meet you there, you stay stuck in the very pain they left you in. What you must realize is that validation from others is temporary. Even if they were to apologize or explain, it might soothe you for a moment, but it won't heal the wound beneath. That wound is your own belief that your value depends on someone else's recognition. Real validation begins the moment you decide to see yourself clearly, even when others don't. It's looking at your reflection and saying, I was honest, I was kind, I gave love, and I did my best. That's enough. When you validate yourself, you stop chasing approval and start reclaiming your dignity. You stop begging to be seen and start honoring the parts of you that were ignored. It's not about arrogance or pretending you don't care. It's about acknowledging that your worth is intrinsic, not conditional. You were worthy the moment you gave your love sincerely, not when someone decided to appreciate it. Once you internalize that, no one's silence or rejection can shake your sense of self. There's something magnetic about self-validation. When you stop chasing validation from others, your energy shifts. You become grounded, calm, and centered. You no longer need to prove your value. You embody it. Ironically, that's often when the avoidant begins to notice your absence. They sense that they no longer control your emotions, and that shift unsettles them. But by then, it doesn't matter, because you're no longer seeking validation from their return. You've already found it within. Self-validation is the quiet confidence that says, I'm proud of how I loved and I forgive myself for what I tolerated. It's the peace that comes from realizing that closure, respect, and worth are things you can give yourself. When you reach that point, you stop needing their words to define your story. You define it yourself with self-trust, self-love, and the unshakable belief that you were enough all along. Silence can be one of the most powerful responses you'll ever give, especially when dealing with someone who thrives on emotional distance. When you stop chasing, stop pleading, and stop trying to explain your worth, something remarkable happens. The entire dynamic shifts. The avoidant who once felt in control because of your pursuit suddenly feels the emptiness of your absence. Silence speaks volumes where words once fell on deaf ears. It isn't about manipulation or punishment. It's about reclaiming your peace and power through stillness. When you choose silence, you're not being cold. You're being calm. There's a difference. Coldness is rooted in bitterness. Calmness is rooted in strength. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It means you've reached a place where explaining yourself no longer feels necessary. You're no longer interested in convincing someone to value what they couldn't recognize on their own. That kind of silence carries a presence far louder than any argument ever could. The avoidant personality thrives on space and control. They're used to you reaching out first, asking questions, trying to fix things, or seeking reassurance. Every time you do that, you reaffirm their power in the connection. They know they can pull away and you'll come running to bridge the gap. But when you stop chasing, when you allow the distance to exist without chasing closure or comfort, you disrupt the pattern completely. They begin to wonder why you've gone quiet, what's changed, and why the balance of energy no longer favors them. Silence forces an avoidant to sit with the one thing they're not good at: reflection. While you focus on your healing, they start to feel the weight of what they've lost. Your absence echoes in their routine. The good morning text that stopped coming, the thoughtful messages they used to take for granted, all those little things begin to stand out in their absence. Silence has a way of making people hear what your words could never communicate, that you're no longer waiting for them to show up. But the most important part of silence is what it does for you. It creates space for clarity. When you're not constantly reacting to their behavior or seeking their response, you finally have time to listen to yourself. You begin to hear your own needs, your own boundaries, and your own voice again. Silence becomes a healing environment where your self-worth starts to rebuild itself. Instead of waiting for their next move, you begin focusing on yours. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence is magnetic. It's mysterious, dignified, and deeply empowering. You don't need to prove your value through confrontation. Your peace proves it for you. The more quietly you move forward, the more power you hold. You're no longer trying to get a reaction. You're embodying resolution. That quiet detachment doesn't just unsettle the avoidant. It liberates you, because silence, when used from a place of strength, doesn't say I don't care. It says I've already chosen myself. Detachment is one of the hardest yet most transformative steps you can take after dealing with an avoidant. It doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It means you stop allowing your emotions to control you. It's the moment you decide that your peace is more important than their inconsistency. When you detach, you remove the emotional hooks that once kept you tied to their behavior. You stop reacting to every pull and push, every breadcrumb of attention, and every mixed signal. Instead, you begin to respond with clarity, control, and self-respect. Your detachment becomes your power because it flips the dynamic entirely. An avoidant often feels secure in knowing that no matter how far they pull away, you'll always be there waiting. They draw comfort from your availability, even when they don't reciprocate your energy. But when you detach, truly detach, they start to feel a loss of control. They sense that something fundamental has shifted, and suddenly their power over you begins to fade. That's when regret begins to creep in, not because you played games, but because they realize they've lost the emotional certainty they once relied on. Detachment isn't indifference, it's emotional maturity. It's choosing not to be consumed by someone else's inability to meet you where you are. It's saying, I can still love you, but I won't sacrifice myself in the process. You stop chasing explanations and start accepting reality. You stop overanalyzing their silence and start focusing on your peace. Detachment teaches you that you can care deeply without losing yourself in the process. That balance is what makes you untouchable. When you detach, your energy changes. You move differently. You no longer check your phone every few minutes hoping for their message. You no longer replay conversations in your head trying to decode hidden meanings. You become grounded in your own life, investing your time into things and people that give back, not drain. That shift doesn't just heal you, it radiates confidence. You begin to glow differently because you're no longer chasing someone who's running away from their own emotions. The beauty of detachment is that it invites reflection on both sides. While you grow stronger and more centered, the avoidance starts to feel the space you've created. They might not understand it at first, but over time, the absence of your emotional presence starts to sink in. Avoidants often realize too late that the calm, consistent love they once took for granted is gone. And while they sit with that regret, you'll be too focused on your growth to notice. That's the quiet power of detachment. It allows you to move on gracefully while they stay stuck in the consequences of their actions. You don't detach to make them miss you. You detach to remember yourself. It's a declaration of self-worth that says, I don't need your attention to feel valuable. You stop letting their behavior dictate your emotions. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. And when that happens, the balance of power returns where it always should have been. With you, detachment isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect. It's the realization that the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your peace intact. Healing is the most powerful form of revenge because it turns your pain into strength and your heartbreak into growth. When someone walks away, especially an avoidant who disappears without explanation, it can feel like your entire world collapses. You replay every moment, searching for answers, wondering what you could have done differently. But healing begins the moment you stop asking why and start focusing on how you can rebuild yourself, how you can learn from the pain, and how you can become someone even stronger because of it. The best revenge is never in making them regret losing you. It's in creating a life so full and peaceful that their memory no longer controls you. When you heal, you take the energy you once gave to trying to understand them and invest it back into yourself. You start nurturing the parts of you that were neglected while you were trying to hold the relationship together. Healing isn't instant. It's a slow and often uncomfortable process. It's facing the truth that you wanted something from someone who couldn't give it. It's accepting that closure may never come, but peace still can. Every time you choose yourself instead of chasing them, every time you decide to rest instead of overthink, you reclaim a little more of your power. Avoidants expect you to stay stuck. They assume you'll keep orbiting around their absence, waiting for them to reappear. But when you start to heal, you quietly break that pattern. You stop reacting to their silence, you stop waiting for their messages, and you stop building your days around the hope that they'll change. That shift doesn't happen overnight, but it's visible. It's in the way you start smiling again without forcing it, the way you start making plans that don't include them, the way your voice sounds steadier when you talk about the past. Healing doesn't erase what happened, but it rewrites your relationship with it. As you heal, you begin to see the relationship differently. You start recognizing that their avoidance wasn't about your lack of worth. It was about their lack of readiness. You stop personalizing their distance and start understanding it as a reflection of their emotional limitations, not your inadequacy. That realization brings a deep sense of freedom. You no longer crave revenge or validation because you realize the true victory is peace. Healing allows you to move forward without bitterness, without needing them to suffer or apologize. And here's the beautiful part. When you truly heal, it often does make them regret losing you. Not because you tried to make them, but because they see what they can never have again. Your calm, your light, your growth, they remember the version of you that gave everything and realize they'll never be loved that way again. But by then, you'll be in a place where their regret no longer matters. Healing shifts the focus from what you lost to what you've gained, a stronger sense of self, deeper boundaries, and a new understanding of love that starts and ends with you. That's why healing is the ultimate revenge. Because while they stay trapped in avoidance, you rise, you build a peaceful life that doesn't revolve around their absence. You become the person who no longer needs closure, validation, or reaction. You become the proof that love, even when it ends painfully, can still lead you back to yourself. And nothing unsettles an avoidant more than realizing the person they once left behind has finally found peace they can't disturb. In the end, remember that real strength doesn't come from chasing answers or proving your worth. It comes from choosing peace over pain, growth over confusion, and self-respect over attachment. You don't need closure from someone who couldn't show up for you. You need courage to walk away and trust that healing will write the ending for you. The moment you stop needing them to see your value is the moment you truly reclaim it. Thank you for listening, for choosing growth over grief, and for reminding yourself that the greatest comeback is always the one where you find yourself again.